Hello and welcome to the Alpha Movement Podcast. My name is Tom Foxley, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Shawn Charlebois. He is the coach at Barrie Strength Club. He's a phenomenal coach. He's someone that I've had in the Alpha Athletes page for a long time, and he's been providing a hell of a lot of content. He's a great coach. He really knows his stuff, and today we focus on lifting awkward objects, kettlebells, and a lot of mindset stuff as well. He is a great coach, as I've already said. Remember, you can head to alphamovement.co to find out a bit more about the Alpha Movement, and you can head to patreon.com/alphamovementpodcast to support the show, or just share the shit out of this show. It's a real pleasure to have you listening. And here is Mr. Shawn Charlebois. Okay, Shawn, welcome to the show. It's a real pleasure to have you on here. Can we start off, because I'll do a kind of biographical intro after this. Can we start off with filling in a bit more color about who you are, kind of a few thoughts that you kind of hold dear and that kind of stuff?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Shawn Charlebois. I am a gym owner and strength coach. Been doing that for 5 years. I'm very happily married for 5 years as well. I was formerly a corrections officer for 8 years with the government of Ontario. I always refer to that period of my life as my true education, the real eye-opener. And a couple things that I really hold true is for any advice for anybody is you can't really know what you want until you've experienced genuine things that you don't want. And I'm such a firm believer in that with any aspect of life. So those 8 years in corrections, I really experienced a lot of things that I didn't want to do anymore, and I decided to follow the passion and follow my gut, and I never looked back, and I don't regret it whatsoever. So
had you always been a follower of strength training or an athlete at that point, and then how did the transition happen?
Yeah, I've been involved with in martial arts since I was a very, very young kid, and then into boxing, a little bit of jiu-jitsu when I was more of an adolescent and in high school. But I've always done some form of physical training. So I probably couldn't call it strength training, but physical training. So I've always been able to do push-ups from a young age, and, the lunges and different kicks and crawls and all that stuff. So with the emergence of all these like primal movement patterns and all these things, I laugh a bit because I'm like, man, I learned about this when I was a kid, and like it's fantastic. I'm not dismissing the value of any of it, but it's nothing new. Athletes have been training like this for a long, long time, and it's fun. It's fun. You play around and it's great. But yeah, I've been that was my background, and then I got into lifting more seriously in high school, college. And now that when I got introduced to kettlebells, I've been doing kettlebells almost exclusively for the better part of 10 years. The odd stone and keg I like to pick up too.
Nice. No, I know what you mean about the primal stuff. It's worrying that some people actually do have to be re-educated about it, but it's such a fundamental thing that most people do, and then they kind of get lost in it. Can you talk a bit about that exact transition from a kind of a normal job to kind of a strength coach job?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the best thing I can talk about. So in year 5 in my 8-year career, I was doing a watch tour, and what basically that just means checking on the well-being of the inmates when they were locked up. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. There was one point where I literally heard a voice inside and said, like, is this what you're going to do? Is this it? Is this what you're doing for the rest of your life? And then the next physical step that I took going forward, with every ounce of my being, I heard a resounding no. So I was like, wow. So I knew that it was already it's like it already happened. I was not going to do that. I was not going to retire from there anymore. And then all I can think about for the rest of that tour was health, fitness, strength, and empowerment. So it was that night that I decided to start educating myself for the next 3 years, and I made a plan, and I made with a lot of discipline, I transitioned from being a corrections officer to marrying my wife, buying a house and all this stuff, and doing that transition, becoming a trainer, a strength coach, and eventually owning the gym. It was a wild ride, but I was very fortunate to have the jail at that point because it provided me with a good income, and I was really able to take my education seriously, and I did it at my own terms while working full time. So it was a privilege. It was a gift at the same time, but there was a lot of shit that I had to deal with too. So,
were there any particular lessons that you learned from working in the jail?
Oh man, yeah. Learning about people in general, like, on one hand, my coworkers and staff members, who were great, by the way, but some you can tell were stuck. They were stuck. They didn't want to be there, and they thought they didn't have a choice. Whereas I quickly realized that you do have a choice, right? Like, you can change your environment. You can change your situation. You just have to decide to do it. So some of the lessons that I learned was a lot of people accepted things the way they were. They were not willing to fight in that sense for something more, and not a lot of people are passionate. They're just not a lot of people that are passionate about life or about achieving things. In terms of other lessons that I could apply to, like, strength training or something, the discipline about taking action has never been more clear. Sometimes you just don't want to do things, but it doesn't matter if you don't want to do things. Doing it consistently is what matters, right? There's that saying that we are not our feelings, we are what we repeatedly do. Yeah. I can't disagree. It's a perfect thing. And I even tell self-talk. Sometimes I'll tell that to myself when I'm feeling whiny. So it works, but couldn't say it better myself. We are not our feelings. We are what we repeatedly do.
So why was strength training the natural progression from that point then?
Strength and empowerment. That's kind of what I look to when we talk about strength training. And not that there's anything wrong with conditioning or muscle endurance or any of that stuff, but the struggle, it's such a metaphor to me. Like, I know many people, I'm definitely not the first to say it, many people will say, back squats are like the greatest metaphor for life, like the weight's holding you down and you got to get up. And I love that. I see it as very practical and what's more associated with strength training. Well, the back squat is pretty prevalent in the strength training world. Same with lifting a stone, right? Like, that stone is a big mass of nature. Lapping that sucker and getting it on your shoulder, that takes discipline, that takes focus, and that, to me, that is such a fantastic metaphor for a lifestyle. So strength and empowerment is the key, and it's always resonated with me. It's always resonated with me. So,
what were the first few steps then in transitioning from working the jail to like where you are now?
Yeah, the first few steps. So the first steps was to get some type of formal education, and there's many options out there now. But my step was I attained a correspondence diploma in health and fitness, so that was one. Later that year, I did specialist in strength and conditioning certification, and multiple other certs that I don't have to keep going on about that. But to some type of education was important because it shows that you take it seriously, and there's a bit of credibility there. After that, what I started doing was acquiring equipment, and I was doing it very organically. I would buy some kettlebells here and there. I bought a weighted vest here and there, and then eventually more and more and more. Just as if a carpenter acquires tools over his lifespan or his career, I acquire many tools as well, and I'm sure you do too. So acquiring equipment and the equipment that you like, that resonates with you the most, was important to me. After that, it really was an organic process. I started training part-time when I was still at the jail, getting experience, and I started doing group training at a local gym in the city that I'm living in now. And eventually we moved here, but I wasn't living there originally. So I did a lot of stuff on the side for a couple of years before I took the full leap to really do it full time. So I established a little bit of a clientele, or at least a reputation, and reputation of this guy's good, he knows what he's doing. And I had the equipment, and I had the credibility, the experience, and the education behind myself to shoot for it. After that, it's just no risk, no reward. You just got to go for it and hit the ground running. And I learned so much that first year that it's looking back, it was a wild ride. It was a wild ride, man.
Oh yeah, you kind of look back at a year ago and you're like, oh shit, was I really doing that now and then? And you change so quickly, don't you? Why do you think that, let's say kettlebells and awkward objects and this kind of more strongman approach to training is taking like hold of the fitness scene at the moment? Why do you think it's really growing in popularity? Why
do I think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can't argue the real world application for strongman training. We'll just label it as strongman training. I always say to people, unless somebody is bedridden, they will need to do some type of version of farmer's walk. It's just, you're going to do it anyway with groceries or what have you. But real world application through strongman training, which is, I know many people label it as functional training. I know many other people label functional training differently too, but that's a different story. But and it's fun. It's just a fun way to. I love dragging sleds. I love picking stuff, putting it up on my shoulder, and walking. And I think people find they get that empowerment when they do something that they just never thought they'd be able to do. So it's fun. It takes you out of the gym, takes you out of the hamster wheel sort of idea, and you're moving more. It's not so machine based or staying still. It can be fun, and there's a big application to the real world.
Yeah, it makes you feel alpha as fuck as well, lifting up stones and kegs. It's great.
I think people will realize. There's some people that will probably always argue what functional training actually is. That's debatable. If some guru labels it one way and another guru labels it another, who the hell's right? It's whatever. You got to start listening to yourself and what resonates with you eventually. It really is about that. It's finding what works well for you and the people that choose to follow you.
So are you working on a one-to-one basis with clients or in a group kind of situation?
Yeah, bit of both.
Okay.
Several one-on-ones and then small groups for sure.
And what's the first few weeks look like with getting a new client in?
Well, so I always assess people, and what I mean by that is some version of a movement screen, the 6 basic type movements. And after that, barring there's no real huge restrictions, I will get them to do a sample sort of work capacity workout. And it's all appropriate. It depends on the individual, whatever, but it's usually some form of push-up, usually some pulls with the TRX, a version of a squat, maybe a sled carry or a farmer's walk, and then a plank, just to sort of see what they can handle, a little bit of a fitness test, and then we take it from there. If they can handle the group, I will guide them in the group direction. If they can't, I'll say I truly recommend one-on-ones, and they either sign up or they do a group or they choose to go somewhere else. So that's kind of the process.
And what does the movement screening look like? Is that kind of an FMS type thing, or is it something you've developed yourself?
Well, so what I do, it's not the FMS, no, but I look at, for lack of a better term, some joint mobility drills. We always start with the neck. We'll look back and forth. We'll do all 3 planes of movement. We work our way down the chain. And what I'm looking at is real restrictions, any wincing in the face, or, oh, that's tight, or, oh, that's uncomfortable. And we go down the body. And it's a great way to get them to warm up, and it's a great way to see segmentally if there's any real huge issues. After that, I look at a squat, and I also assess how they're responding to my cues and if they're coachable. Because this is a thing, right? When I left the jail, I was so happy. I would have trained anybody and done anything. Now I'm starting to realize, like, okay, this might not be for everybody. And if they're not responding well to certain cues, I might not want to work with them. And I have the luxury of being taking that approach. Anyway, and then we'll look at half kneeling or lunge pattern, a plank or push-up, sometimes both. I'll look at the pulling pattern. I'll see where they're, if they got scapular mobility or like huge forward head posture around the shoulders. I'll look for that. I don't really look at the hinge too much because I just see it as overkill when it's the assessment time. And then the rest of it, I just sort of look when they are doing like the sort of fitness test element. I just look at their gait. I look at all kinds of things, their ability to hold a good dynamic posture, and it's pretty straightforward. I think if a coach is competent, you can train somebody quite well, and you don't need all these protocols, if you will. So that's just my take on it.
So where did you start using kettlebells? And can you talk about some of the kind of, I saw you did a really good video on the subtleties of the two-handed swing. And can you go into that as well?
Yeah. I learned about kettlebells when I didn't even know about kettlebells until I saw Rocky Balboa, and it was one of the training montages, and he was lifting this thing, and I was like, what the hell is that? That looks awesome. So on the internet, there's a company, an agency called Agatsu. It's a Canadian kettlebell certification company, and he does other things too, Shawn Mosen. And I learned originally through him, and I got really strong through his methods. And then I actually attained my level 2 at that point with him. And then I just started doing a lot of stuff on my own, and then I got Strong First certified in 2013. But yeah, I started that. 2006 is when I really started taking that seriously, and I got to tell you, I think with the martial arts background, and I hate saying this because it just sounds like I'm being arrogant, but it really came very naturally to me. Yeah. I just knew what it was all about, and it was. I was swinging at 24, like almost immediately. I was cleaning it, and I just understood it. I understood what it was all about, and I'm very grateful for that. Very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, definitely, it works the other way as well. You go from just having a good movement quality in strength training, and then you take that. For me, it's been like I've gone towards martial arts, and it's like, oh yeah, like the same principles apply. Move from like the center of your body to the extremities, and like everything kind of it flows, and you kind of that's why the training is so important, because it just
totally. It's amazing, actually. It's incredible how the carryover for different things, right? Like the body awareness in martial arts will certainly carry over to yoga poses, or the hip and spine stability during a deadlift, a barbell deadlift or something. It's incredible. And then force production when if you hit the heavy bag or strike somebody, that's essentially the kettlebell swing. It's just an incredible chain, the body.
No, exactly. And then you go to something that you'd think that's completely irrelevant. Like I went and played golf recently, and it's just like the hip drive. Like it all comes from the hips. It's the same principles that you apply. That's what I love about human movement and training. Can you talk for a bit? Actually, can we do the subtleties of the swing and kind of like the less obvious points of the swing?
Sure. I would hope this would be an obvious point, but I'll mention it right off the hop. Some people will hybrid the swing pattern and do a little bit more of a squat, and it's not necessarily a bad thing depending on their body type and depending on the restrictions. Usually people with very tight quads will do more of a squat as opposed to a hip hinge. But the swing is a hip hinge. It really is. So, a deadlift, if anybody's listening, the hip hinge is a deadlift and the swing is a deadlift, but we do it fast. If you cannot shoot the hips back far enough and recruit that energy in the hamstrings, the posterior chain, you're not going to get the best bang for your buck. The swing, it really is that hip hinge. It's that energy transfer from the hip snap and leg drive, and coming in and being a statue when you're standing for that second or two. And then just taking that elastic energy and just keeping that process going. It's like a band. It's loose and then tight, loose, then tight, loose, then tight. Subtleties, issues with it. I actually think shoulder stability is a huge issue with it. A lot of people will shrug up. And this, well, okay, depending on your philosophy and what you like, I have swung the kettlebell overhead. I have done that. I don't see an issue with it as long as mobility problems aren't prevalent. And as long as the person's competent in doing it. You don't want somebody to swing up to their chest height and then to pull it up with their shoulders. That's just unsafe. I know that's big in the CrossFit world, the overhead swings. But when it's done properly, I don't see any issue with it. So if you're going to do like sort of the Russian style swing, when we keep it at chest height, the shoulders need to be stable down and back, and really you can lock out the elbows hard and break the handle, just as if you were to break the barbell when you do a barbell deadlift, and have that external rotation of your shoulders to connect the lat, to connect to the hip, and so on and so forth. So shoulder stability is a big one. Really patterning the hip hinge properly and hard before you do the swings. I actually have a lot of my clients deadlift very like for months sometimes, depending on their conditioning. And then they do a swing. I get them deadlifting the 32 or 36 and get them to do it perfectly. And then when it's time to swing a 35 pounder, it's easy. It takes a little bit of learning because it's faster, but they can easily do it. They have the stability and the strength to get through that, as opposed to somebody who's fresh off the street and then get them swinging. It's not always the most responsible. That's my take on it. I think the swing is an awesome exercise, but for some people, it's just not responsible. You know what I mean? It really is it's got it has the potential to really hurt somebody if they don't do it right.
And that comes down to your authority as a coach as well. Like the kind of the poor coaches or the novice coaches will want to get people like right in at that deep end, like going, oh yeah, it's like the standard thing, the issue that CrossFit had a while ago. Like come here and you do a kick and pull up on your first first session. But it's the skill, intensity, volume thing, keeping that skill right, getting the skill first. Like it sounds like you're a massive practitioner of that, which is
well. I just think I think there's so many benefits of doing that. Like it's like, hey, you're working hard. I can crush you with hip hinges, deadlift, squats, and a couple push pulls, and you'll be fine. You'll adapt quite well. But don't look. This is the problem with group training. Sorry, a little tangent here. And I've seen it personally too. Group training, people will look at the person next to them and say, I want to do that. I go, but you're not ready for it yet. And that doesn't mean you're a bad person or that I'm condescending to you. You're just not ready for it. So they see somebody doing one-arm snatch, which is one of the best athletic movements that you could possibly do for training. And they want to do that. But I'm like, well, you can't even swing properly yet. So it's completely irresponsible to get you to do this kettlebell snatch when your hip snap and leg drive isn't there, your shoulder mobility and stability is not there. That's the real issue with group training. Group training done well can be a wonderful thing, and I believe I do it well. But there's always a little bit of that competition element, which is good to a point, right? It's always a fine line with everything, and mastering that is hard. It's very, very hard. It's a little bit like babysitting, to be honest with you, but it's okay. It's I don't mean that in a condescending way either, but you have to look after them. You want people to do well. You don't want them to be injured. That's the last thing you want. But they need to be having fun. They need to feel like they're enough. But sometimes that can be taxing for sure.
Yeah. You've just got to convey the idea that slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and sometimes you have to go slow to go fast in the long run, to get furthest in the long run.
Absolutely.
Do you ever use barbells?
Barbells? Yeah. I'm starting to do that more with my clients. I personally use them, yes. Mm-hmm. My clients were starting to deadlift more, and but that's from years of doing hip hinges and kettlebells and this and that. But yeah, we use barbells. I don't do back squats with many people or bench press or anything like that with many. My quick lifts I save for kettlebells.
Okay.
Like cleans and snatches and stuff. I save that because I believe I'm very good at instructing those. And the bar, I don't have as much experience doing power cleans and that kind of stuff, but maybe in the future I'll get there with that. But I think the kettlebells have so much carryover with one or two. So they're really a tool that I see a lot of value in. But I use barbells for sure.
Yeah. It's I think it depends whether you're getting people from 20% to 80% or 80% to 100% or 80% to 95%. Like I think that upper part is where the Olympic lift starts coming to their own with a barbell. But again, they're not entirely necessary. If you can use sandbags, if you can use awkward objects, that's the way forwards.
For sure. Yeah. Like it's all goal. Like to me, half the battle is getting your clients to really care about what it is you're doing, right? And that's half the battle. That's not even that's like 90% of the battle, right? And if they only think the Olympic lifts are going to do it, then you might want to give them a little bit of leeway and say, okay, if they can handle it, we'll start doing that kind of stuff. But it's there's infinite nuance there, though. There's such subtleties and like such time, and it doesn't really work for the majority of people, I don't think. But anyway, sandbags and heavy shit and awkward objects. Yeah. Where did that start to come into the frame, and how do you apply that? Yeah, you know what? I actually I can't remember when I first started using sandbags. I honestly can't, but I do. Obviously, it happened. But when I did start using them, I quickly was able to apply the kettlebell principles, like force production, proper positioning, the hip hinge, all this stuff, and I was easily able to teach myself the snatches, split snatches, cleans, shoulder carries, all these things, just through the same fundamentals of kettlebell training. So experimenting with that was fantastic. And the thing with I love the sandbags that you were just showing the other day, but because the heaviest sandbags that I have are like 60 to 80 pounds tops, right? So, and they're also commercial bags. So they have the handles, and the handles allow for the cleans, snatches, and different Olympic lift variations like that. And I think they're amazing. I think they're great conditioning tools, and they're very fun. I was introduced to the stones at the Highland Games in 2014 in Uxbridge, 2014 15, can't remember. And there was the man stone challenge. So of course I had to try it. And it started, you started with an 80 pounder, 80 pounds? Yeah. Shoulder it, put it down. 150 was the next one. Shoulder it, put it down, and then there was a 220. So lo and behold, I was actually able to do it. I couldn't believe it because I've never ever lifted a stone before, but it was awesome. And then once I did that, I was so hooked because it's such an amazing lift, and it's just like that. You're that part of nature, right? There's one stone that we got from the cottage. It was under the lake. It was at the bottom of the lake floor for the longest time. And I'm like, I resurrected this thing, that's been sitting there for God knows how long. And now I lift it. So it's an awesome feeling too. And you don't get much of a feeling, a different feeling than lifting a stone onto your shoulder. It's pretty awesome.
Where did you start off with stone training?
Oh shit. Yeah. This is for some, I don't apply stone training to my clients to too many. I'll say that. I do run a men's group that they will Zerker carry a stone, right? Like just on the chest kind of thing. And they'll do loaded carries with that. But very few people do I coach in stone training. It's just not something, some people will complain, oh, it leaves a mark on my shoulder. I'm like, yeah, it does. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Applying it to clients, it doesn't always work. It just doesn't always. You get the odd nut job that wants to do it, and you go, great, let's go, if it's appropriate. But usually it's sandbags, kegs, and Well, yeah, that would be for odd objects. That would be about it. Farm handles, some of the more commercial odd objects, but sandbags and kegs you can apply almost immediately. Kegs in the form of hip carries, that's a very functional pattern.
You start off with carries, then that would be your first movement to go to.
Sorry, I see what you're saying. Yes, carries would be it for sure.
Yeah.
Shouldering a sandbag, I find most people can grasp that concept quite well. If their hip hinge is good, if they don't have any issues in their low back, and they're listening to my cues, they can definitely safely shoulder a sandbag, which very closely mimics the bag of shingles or what have you, and a very functional movement. So carries and shouldering. Yep, and depending on if their fitness level, eventually overhead presses and that kind of stuff. But carries and shoulders would be it.
Oh, the stability is insane, though, isn't it? Like you get those, and it's insane. This morning, I completely flattered myself, and I'd never expected it to be like that. Where would you use, or how would you apply using light awkward objects, and how would you apply using heavy awkward objects?
Light awkward objects could be great for a conditioning method or conditioning protocol. I have no issues with training elderly people, but I do have elderly people who will lift relatively light. Now they will do the same types of exercises, but just with a much lighter weight. And then I'll usually do it in a circuit type fashion, and it's fantastic for their conditioning. It's very, very functional, and they're getting a bit of that mental toughness aspect of it as well. And having said that, they get strong as well because then we can move up the weight and whatnot. Heavy awkward objects, it all comes down to if the client is ready for it, and if they've demonstrated like good focus. Honestly, you can be really good at it, but if you don't focus for one rep, there goes your back. If their form isn't spot on, you're setting themselves up for like huge injury. But if the environment's right, if their focus is there, heavy odd objects would be a great thing for a finisher. I would say like a finisher of a workout. Supersets, depending on the load, like stone shoulders, you wouldn't want to mess with that. You wouldn't be saying like, hey, shoulder this stone and walk 100 feet with it if it's like a near max weight, right? It's just, it's one of those things that you're getting into where it's like, super, super strong.
Yeah. Back to getting that skill work first.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the real answer to that question is like, not a lot of people have the grit and the desire to become extremely skillful in some of these things. So you have to like introduce to them in a very safe manner and kind of a slow manner. But the big patterns like shouldering and just carrying it on the chest, most people can do that almost immediately. Yeah. Unless there's like major issues, but I haven't come across it yet. So.
Yeah, you just you reminded me of something that I've heard, and it's been playing around in my mind. It's the idea of a poor coach gets someone to do what they want. A good coach gets them to do what they need, and a great coach gets them to want what they need.
Yeah. Oh man, what an art! I swear, it's you could always learn in this field, and I'm not just talking about reading books on bench press. Like it really is dealing with people. That's the main thing. Because I got your book, by the way, which is a fantastic resource. I love it. But having said, and this isn't against the book at all, but like let's use my book for example. So I can have gold in that book, and I can say, oh, this is the best. This could change lives, and this could be the best thing that could happen to people. But if nobody reads it, it's useless.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? It's a tricky thing. That doesn't mean to like stop writing or anything, but learning about people, what's going to motivate them, and how to get them to buy into certain things. That's the key. Like that's the real key for sure. It's crazy.
Are there any techniques or things that you found particularly useful for kind of tapping into people's minds and kind of getting to want what they need?
Oh man. Nothing groundbreaking. I usually have honest conversations with them. You know, being present when you're training and being present during each phase of the process is very, very, very important. You know, if you're an intuitive coach, your clients are going to pick up on that. They're going to, they're going to like and trust you, and then they'll be open to sharing maybe different things in their life. And that might not seem like it's relevant, but once you get a couple pieces of information, you can start not manipulating them. That's the wrong sense of the word. But if you ask certain questions about personal things of their life with a genuine concern and a genuine care, you will get them to start thinking of the reasons why they're doing the training. It's like, oh, you want to be there for your kid, or you want to be able to play with your kid, or you want to be there. You want to be strong for your loved ones, right? You want to lead by example to your family. Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And then you give them some compliments, and then you see that you coach them through these harder things, and you can see the empowerment by the time they, from when they come in the door and then when they leave, they feel fantastic, right? So I try to remind them of maybe some of the things that they have going on in their life. Some people don't want to share anything, and that's fine too. But techniques, I always encourage people to get my book, or sometimes I'll even email them to the PDF. And there's several points on like sort of mindset in the beginning. A couple questions is like, how do you want to be remembered? What are you passionate about? Like, what are some obstacles that you've been avoiding for a long time? Asking like kind of in your face questions. Some people respond well to that.
Yeah. So, if you can encourage people to be introspective, that's a huge advantage in your coaching.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there anyone in the kind of the awkward object lifting world or the strength conditioning world that you particularly follow who's influenced you?
Yeah, 100%. Dan John is one of my one of the guys. It's so hard to. It's just every time I read, and it could be the most simple type thing, and he says it in a way that just makes you sort of smile, and I'm like, yeah, what a great resource. So Dan John, I have to say Zach Evanesh. He's either, in my opinion, he's either the guy that you love or the guy that you go, that guy's full of it. But I swear to God that he is, he's a great motivator. And it was actually one of his programs that I got when I was at the jail that really was a catalyst to, I should have said that, really was a catalyst for me to make the transition. It honestly changed the direction of my life, and I can't thank him enough for providing that. But he's a great inspiration. I've watched several videos of Elliot Hulse. I've never met Elliot, but I think he's a great resource. I think he's doing a lot of good, especially now. I do like Mike Boyle's stuff, Pavel's stuff. There's probably others, but those are the main guys. And just a quick point on that, I find it, this isn't even closed-minded. I try to, maybe it's a bit contradictory, but I don't know. Listening to too many people sometimes can get very confusing. It's good to have an open mind. It really is. But I find sometimes I want to tell people, pick a direction and go with it. Yeah. Have an open mind, but if there's certain things about it that resonate with you, go in that direction. And that's not a bad thing. Maybe you'll change routes later, but I'm not going to be the guy that's all about balancing on one leg on a stability ball or what have you. And that's not. I'm not even slamming it. If that works for people, great. But I really do. It resonates a whole lot more with the Dan John approach, if you will, or the kettlebell, the hard style approach, if you will.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. It's just like an evolution, I guess, Yeah,
it comes back to the follow the principles thing. Just choose some principles that work and stick to them. It's that simple. Are there any books outside of strength conditioning or any resources or documentaries or anything that have particularly influenced you?
Oh, man. Some of the stuff on Muhammad Ali, like When We Were Kings, and I know there's another one, I believe that was a great documentary. anything involving Bruce Lee is a treat. He's I know you respect him too. Like, those two guys, Googling anything that relates to them would be worth it. Books, Mindset, I thought was fantastic. Start With Why is a great one. Jason actually gifted that to me, Jason Woods, so that was awesome. There's probably many. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
awesome. No, there's loads of people to be getting on with, especially Mindset and Start With Why. Huge. Was it Carol Dweck and Simon Sinek?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. Are there any morning routines you follow on obviously daily basis?
Yes, that's a fantastic question. So I think many people would acknowledge these days that if you start your day with gratitude, that's a pretty powerful thing, and I certainly do. But what I've learned in this last year was to create what we're calling a vision statement, right? So things that you want for yourself, essentially, and be very, very detailed with it. So I have that, and I have it in my phone, so I'll read it. I know it by heart now, but on a good day, I'll read it or say it to myself, sometimes out loud if I'm alone. Morning, noon, and night, I will do that, and it keeps you focused. It keeps you on track, and you can let that can evolve. That can evolve. It doesn't have to be set in stone, right? If there's certain things that don't resonate with you anymore, you can manipulate it and see where your heart's telling you to go, right? So I definitely do that. I've also created a purpose statement, so sort of like a mission statement of what you stand for, and I'll share mine. Very, very simple. I want to be a better man than yesterday. I want to live and work with integrity, love, strength, and respect in all aspects of my life. And it's very simple, and success to me is different. It's not only about money, it's about being there for people, being there for the ones you love, keeping true to your integrity and your character in any situation. You can do that, man. If you can get through your life like that, that's success to me. I always train. I always start with mobility drills in the morning, a little bit of mobility, about 15, 20 minutes, hips, shoulders, cat and cow, a little bit of light yoga type stuff. I find that really helps me. And I enjoy my coffee in the morning.
Right. What coffee?
Just black organic coffee. It's
nice.
Yeah.
And who's the first person you think of when you hear the word successful?
Oh man, well this time I thought of Zach Evanesh. that's interesting.
Nice. Cool. Well, I know you've got to shoot in about a minute, so where can people find out a bit more about you and follow your work and maybe purchase some of your awesome ebooks?
Yeah, sure. BarrieStrengthCoach.com. I'll spell that BarrieStrength. COACH. Yeah, well, that's funny. Barrie Strength Coach. It can be Facebook friends, that kind of stuff. It's all there. It's all there.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for jumping on the show. I won't keep you any longer. I'll speak to you soon.
All right, Tom. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Alpha Movement Podcast. This episode was live streamed in my free Facebook group, Alpha Athletes Page 2.0, where you can get priority access to the guests. You can ask your questions via me to them and get them answered. You can stay up to date with the latest goings on in the Alpha Movement world, and you can access me, my ramblings, my posts, and all the fun stuff. Also, if you enjoy the show, you can head over to patreon.com/Alpha Movement Podcast, and you can pledge however much you want per month, just to keep the show on the road. It's something that sucks up a lot of time. Well, I say sucks up, it's the absolute pleasure to do, but it sucks up time in some way. It sucks up my money and resource, and I want to keep this going for as long as I can because I know how much you guys get from this show. So if you head over to patreon.com patreon.com/Alpha Movement Podcast. You can pledge as little or as much as you want every single month, and you can cancel it whenever you'd like, and it just helps to keep the show going. Other than that, if you head over to iTunes, you can find us, leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed the show, and you can find us on social media. This show relies on your support, so spread the word. If you enjoy it, reach out to whoever my guest was this week and myself, say you enjoyed the show, and I shall see you soon for another episode of the Alpha Movement Podcast.